The phone rang like a funeral bell, low and ominous, and I knew before I even answered that it would not be good news. It was him, Ethan, my son-in-law. His voice cut through the receiver like a poison-tipped dagger, sharp with arrogance, dripping with entitlement. "If you want to be part of Christmas, you'll come clean the house," he barked, the command ringing in my ear as if I were his servant rather than his wife's mother. "I'm not going to do it. If you want to spend time with your daughter and the grandchildren, you'll be here tomorrow morning with cleaning supplies." My chest tightened as I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. But inside, the words sliced me open. My living room fell silent around me, the familiar space transformed suddenly into a lonely cathedral. The golden evening light filtered through the lace curtains I had hung myself decades ago, shadows flickering across furniture I had selected with such care, furniture polished and gleaming because, at 72 years old, I, Margaret Anderson, have never lived in clutter or filth. "Did you hear me?" he pressed, his voice growing sharper as if he were scolding a child. "Charlotte agrees. She says it's about time you contributed something useful instead of just criticizing." The name, my daughter's name, fell like a stone into the pit of my stomach. Charlotte, my only child, my pride and joy, the little girl I carried through long nights of fever and fear, the teenager I cheered for at every recital, the young woman I hugged at her wedding believing she had chosen wisely, believing she had found a man worthy of her heart. And now that same man, Ethan, was using her voice as a weapon against me. Besides, he went on coldly, "This year, dinner will be at our new house, the one we bought without your help, by the way. So if you want to see the kids open their presents, you know what you have to do." His words hit me like stones hurled against glass, each one cracking something deep inside. To see my grandchildren, those bright little lights of my life, the ones who always ran to me shouting, "Grandma!" with arms wide open, my presence now was reduced to a transaction. My love conditioned on me becoming their unpaid maid. "Well," he pressed, "are you going to come clean? Or do you want to spend Christmas alone in your little old house watching TV reruns?" A little old house? As if this home, the place where I raised my daughter alone after her father left, the place where I worked double shifts at the diner and the factory so she would have everything she needed, was worthless. As if the walls that held our laughter, our tears, our struggles were nothing but outdated bricks. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced myself to speak with a calmness that surprised even me. "Enjoy it," I said softly. "What did you say?" His tone sharpened, confused. "I said enjoy it. Have a beautiful Christmas." And then, with the quietest rebellion I had ever dared, I hung up. The silence afterward was thunderous, a silence that seemed to reverberate through my chest. I lowered the phone slowly and sat in my favorite armchair, the green velvet one that had belonged to my own mother, cradling the receiver as if it were something sacred. My hands trembled, but not with fear. No, this was something else entirely. This was determination, crystallizing in my veins like molten steel cooling into unbreakable ice. I rose and walked to the window. My garden stretched before me, a postcard of order and beauty. The rose bushes I had planted with my own hand stood proudly against the winter cold. The little stone path my son Daniel had helped me lay when he was just 12 still curved through the yard like a memory carved into earth. The fountain at the center bubbled softly, welcoming the sparrows who came to drink each morning. Everything was in its place, except me, misplaced in the lives of my own family. I turned from the window and walked with purpose to my desk. From the top drawer, I drew out a cream-colored folder, its edges already worn from the number of times I had peeked at its contents in secret. Inside, gleaming like a treasure, were the plane tickets I had been saving for weeks. Destination? Turks and Caicos, a private island resort in the Caribbean. Departure? Tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. While Ethan expected me to show up with a bucket and a mop, I would be boarding a plane to paradise. While he sneered about my little old house, I would be toasting French champagne beneath palm trees, my silver hair catching the sunlight like strands of silk. This trip was no whim. I had booked it 2 months ago after their last humiliation, when Charlotte and Ethan told me I was too old-fashioned to have any say in my grandchildren's schooling, after they forbade me from bringing gifts because I was spoiling the children too much, after they made me feel like an intruder at birthday parties, like a stranger in my own family. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had been saving quietly for years. The tips I tucked away in coffee cans, the modest investments I made when I was still waitressing at 50, the retirement money I refused to squander. I had denied myself luxuries for decades, and now all of it had blossomed into a secret garden of security. My secret, my future, my freedom. I picked up the phone again, but this time my heart was steady. I dialed the number of the travel agency. "Mrs. Anderson," came the cheerful voice of Caroline, the young woman who had helped me plan every detail. I replied, completely ready. And this time, my smile was genuine, broadening across my face like sunrise. "And Caroline, make sure the professional photographer is available. I want the best pictures of my life." As I hung up, I felt a thrill ripple through me. While Charlotte and Ethan prepared their staged Christmas dinner, while they polished their smug new house, I would be stepping into a different story. One that I wrote for myself, one where I was no longer the humiliated, overlooked grandmother waiting on the sidelines for scraps of affection. I was going to live, to shine, to remind myself and everyone else that Margaret Anderson was not to be underestimated. The morning rose like a golden caress against my skin, not in my drafty little house in Ohio, but in the most luxurious suite at the Turks and Caicos resort. The sound of waves curling against white sand serving as my wake-up call. The air smelled of salt, jasmine, and freedom, and for the first time in decades, I hadn't started awake because of someone else's demands. No ringing phone from Charlotte asking for babysitting, no guilt-laced requests from Ethan for money, no silent accusations in the air reminding me that I was supposedly never enough. I walked barefoot across the cool marble of the bathroom and stopped before the mirror. The woman gazing back at me hardly resembled the one Ethan had tried to reduce to a maid. My silver hair glistened in the morning light, my eyes sparkled with something I hadn't seen in years: confidence. At 72, I looked radiant. I slipped into the coral dress I had bought specifically for this trip, one I'd hidden away in the back of my closet as if it were contraband, waiting for the right moment. It hugged my body softly, highlighting a golden tan already beginning to form from yesterday's arrival. Breakfast arrived on a silver tray and was set upon my private terrace overlooking the sea. Tropical fruits I had never tasted before, mangoes and papayas bursting with sweetness, coffee that tasted like heaven in a cup, bread so fresh it melted like butter across my tongue. Each bite tasted like victory. As I ate, my mind wandered to Ethan, picturing his smug face growing redder by the minute as he glanced at the clock, wondering where his free maid was. Let him wonder. Let Charlotte wring her hands, pretending not to know the cruelty of her husband's words while silently condoning them. I was done being their scapegoat. "Excuse me, Mrs. Anderson," came a voice, smooth and professional. I looked up to see Mark, the resort's photographer, standing politely at the edge of my terrace. He was young, handsome, and carried his camera as if it were a priceless instrument. "Are you ready for the photo shoot?" "More than ready," I answered, my voice carrying an energy that surprised me, the energy of a woman who was finally claiming the stage of her own life. For hours, Mark transformed me into the star of my own movie. He captured me walking barefoot along the beach as the sun created a golden halo around my figure. He photographed me floating in the infinity pool, the ocean stretching endlessly behind me like a canvas of possibility. He snapped me in the resort's gourmet restaurant, lifting a glass of champagne that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage payment, my smile bright and unrestrained. Each click of the camera was more than just a picture. It was a declaration that I was not invisible, that I was not disposable, that I was not, and never again would be, someone's afterthought. "You have incredible energy," Mark said, scrolling through the images with admiration. "You can tell you're living your best moment." "That's right," I said firmly, the words tasting delicious on my tongue. "I am being reborn." But as he photographed me, as the sea breeze played with my hair and the camera shutter captured freedom in motion, my mind wandered back to when everything had started to crack. It had been 2 years ago, during what was supposed to be an ordinary family dinner. We were gathered at Charlotte and Ethan's home, the table crowded with food I had helped prepare, though my name was never acknowledged in the list of contributors. Ethan had raised his glass with fake cheer and announced that they were expecting their third child. My heart had leapt with joy. I jumped from my chair, hugged them both, and immediately offered to help in any way I could, my mind already spinning with baby blankets to knit, casseroles to freeze, ways to make their life easier. But Ethan had leaned back smugly, placing a hand over Charlotte's, and said, "That won't be necessary, Margaret. My mother is coming to help us. She actually understands how to raise children the right way." The words pierced me like a blade. My daughter's eyes had darted down to her plate, saying nothing, her silence like salt ground into my wound. I had swallowed my tears that night, telling myself not to ruin their celebration, but deep down, something inside me had begun to die. And that night became the pattern. Ethan's mother taking the place of honor at my grandchildren's events, Ethan mocking my old-fashioned ways, Charlotte watching silently, always silently, as though she had traded her voice for his approval. I should have fought harder, I tell myself now, but at the time I allowed my silence to become their weapon. "Mrs. Anderson," Mark interrupted my thoughts gently, "the captain of the private yacht says the sunset will be extraordinary from the water. Would you like to do a few shots there?" "Of course," I said, my heart beating faster, not from nerves, but from exhilaration. We boarded the yacht, a masterpiece of polished wood and gleaming glass. As we sailed across crystalline waters, Mark could hardly take his eyes off me through the lens. He captured me standing at the bow, the wind tugging at my silver hair like strands of silk. He caught the moment I lifted a glass of rosé champagne, the fading sun reflected in its bubbles like tiny liquid diamonds. "These photos are going to be incredible," he murmured. "Are you celebrating something special?" "My independence," I answered instantly, and I meant it. For 72 years, I had lived in service to others, my parents, my late husband, my daughter, my grandchildren. And now, finally, I was living in service to myself. As the sun sank, turning the sky into molten gold, I realized the truth. I didn't need anyone's approval to be happy. I leaned against the railing, inhaling the salt-kissed air, and thought about every humiliation I had endured. Christmases where I arrived with carefully chosen gifts only to be told they were too much and had to be returned. Birthdays where my presence seemed to irritate rather than delight. The school play last year where I discovered, too late, that Charlotte had invited Ethan's mother, but not me. I had stood in the back of the auditorium like an intruder while Ethan's mother sat in the front row waving at my grandchildren as if she were their only grandmother. And then, when the play ended and little Sophie ran into my arms whispering, "Grandma, why do you never come to my important things?" My heart cracked. I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't poison her young heart with the knowledge that her mother and father were deliberately erasing me. So I had smiled and lied, saying, "Oh, sweetheart, Grandma's just been busy. Busy swallowing my pride. Busy being humiliated. Busy being erased." And then came the money. Always the money. A month ago, Charlotte had called in Ethan's voice, not her own. "Mom, Ethan's truck broke down. We need some help to get it fixed so he can take the kids to school." Without hesitation, I transferred the money. I didn't even ask how much it was because when it came to my grandchildren, no sacrifice was too great. 2 days later, scrolling absent-mindedly on social media, I saw it. Photos of Ethan beaming beside a brand new, top-of-the-line Ford F-150, the kind that cost triple the amount that I had given them. He had used my money as part of the down payment, but instead of gratitude, he flaunted his shiny new prize like a trophy. That was the moment my patience snapped. That was the moment I realized they didn't just see me as irrelevant, they saw me as a fool. As the yacht glided back toward the harbor and the last rays of the sun kissed the water, Mark showed me the photos. They were breathtaking. I looked radiant, powerful, unstoppable. I wasn't just taking pictures, I was reclaiming evidence of my existence, proof that Margaret Anderson was alive and thriving. I clutched the phone tightly, knowing that when I shared these images, they would do more than gather likes. They would send shockwaves straight into the home of the people who thought they had erased me. The sun was barely above the horizon when I returned to my suite, my skin still warm from the Caribbean breeze and my mind buzzing with adrenaline that felt sweeter than champagne. The photos had already been edited and transferred to my phone, each one a work of art. Me standing tall at the yacht's bow, me laughing in the pool, me with the sunset at my back, my silver hair glowing like it had caught fire from the sky. These weren't just photographs, they were declarations of war. For 72 years, I had been defined by the roles others assigned me: mother, grandmother, widow, helper, background figure. But now, in these pictures, I was the protagonist of my own story. I sat at the marble desk in the suite and opened my nearly forgotten social media profile, a dusty corner of the internet I had neglected except for the occasional glance at Charlotte's carefully curated posts of her perfect family. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering above the screen, and then, with the calm of a general giving an order, I uploaded the first photo. Me on the beach in my coral dress, my smile radiant, the turquoise sea stretched behind me like eternity. The caption was short but sharp. "When life closes doors, build your own palace. Christmas in paradise." My heart pounded as if I had just leapt from a cliff into the unknown. At first, the likes trickled in slowly, one or two, friends from long ago, neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. Then they multiplied, dozens, then hundreds, comments flooding in. "Margaret, you look beautiful, living your best life, an inspiration to us all." I smiled, but my eyes remained fixed on my phone, waiting for the reactions that mattered. The ones from Charlotte, from Ethan, from anyone in that house where I had been dismissed and diminished. I didn't have to wait long. An hour later, I uploaded the second photo. Me on the yacht at sunset, toasting with champagne, the sky painted in gold and purple flames. The caption? Toasting to second chances and new beginnings. When you close a toxic chapter, life gives you blank pages to write your own happiness. This time, the reaction was immediate. My phone buzzed with a private message from my sister Linda, who lived 3 states away in Pennsylvania. Margaret, where on earth are you? Charlotte called me in a panic. She said you were supposed to be at her house this morning cleaning and you never showed. She said you just disappeared. I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing off the suite's high ceilings. I typed back quickly. I'm where I should have been years ago, Linda, taking care of myself. After a pause, her response appeared. But the kids, Margaret, what will they think when you're not there for Christmas? My heart tightened at the thought of little Sophie, Jacob, and Noah sitting around the tree without me, asking questions their parents would answer with lies. They'll think whatever Charlotte and Ethan tell them. As always, I replied flatly. There was another long pause, and then Linda sent a message that made my blood run cold. Margaret, there's something I should have told you a long time ago. Last year when they invited me to Sophie's graduation, but not you, Charlotte told me you were very busy and preferred not to go. I thought it was odd, but I didn't want to interfere. But now, after seeing your pictures, I realize they've been lying to me too. My hands trembled as I typed. Linda, how many times did they tell you I didn't want to go to family events? Her answer came fast. Many, Margaret. Too many. I believed them. I thought maybe after Bill passed, you had grown bitter and didn't want to be around people. I feel so guilty for not questioning it. I stared at her words until they blurred, fury and vindication boiling in my chest. They hadn't just excluded me, they had rewritten me. They had manipulated my family into believing I was the one withdrawing, that I was the cold one, the absent one, the uncaring one. The magnitude of the betrayal burned hotter than the Caribbean sun. I needed air. I walked out onto the balcony, the ocean roaring in approval, and I uploaded a third photo. Me lounging in the infinity pool, a cocktail in hand, my body relaxed and glowing. The caption cut like a blade. They say revenge is best served cold. I prefer to serve it with champagne and an ocean view. For those who thought it was easy to erase me, here's your answer. The reaction was nuclear. My notifications exploded. The first message was from Tom, my longtime neighbor back in Ohio. Margaret, you look incredible. Are you really in the Caribbean? Good for you. I smiled and typed back. Thank you, Tom. I finally remembered to value myself. He replied almost immediately. You deserve it. You were always too good to everyone else. By the way, did you know Charlotte and Ethan were at your house this morning? They looked frantic, pounding on your door, shouting your name. I almost went over, but they drove off. The image of them, desperate at my empty doorstep, filled me with a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Satisfaction that for once they needed me more than I needed them. Sorrow that it had come to this. More messages poured in, each one a spark to the fire building inside me. Margaret, I'm so happy for you. Finally living for yourself. Inspiring at 72. And then, among them, a message that stopped me in my tracks. It was from Hannah, the woman who had cleaned houses alongside me decades ago, who had been my closest ally during those grueling double shifts when Charlotte was still little. Mrs. Anderson, she wrote, seeing you like this brings me joy. I always knew you were gold. I also know how badly they've treated you. I've heard Ethan's tone with you. I've seen the way Charlotte looks away when he humiliates you. You don't deserve that. Tears pricked my eyes as I typed back, thank you, Hannah. You more than anyone know the truth of what I sacrificed. Yes, she replied, and I also know you deserve every bit of paradise. Her words were like balm on wounds that had been bleeding for years. It wasn't just in my head. Someone else had seen it. Someone else had borne witness. I uploaded a fourth photo, the most devastating yet. Me at the resort's finest restaurant, lobster and caviar before me, a glass of champagne raised high, diamonds on loan from the boutique sparkling at my neck. The caption? Christmas Eve dinner in paradise. Thank you to everyone who taught me that I deserve more than crumbs. Sometimes the best lessons come from the worst teachers. Almost instantly, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my breath catch. Charlotte, my daughter. My finger hovered, but I let it ring. It rang again and again. Then silence. A text came through. Mom, please answer. Where are you? Ethan is furious. The kids are asking for you. Please come home. I stared at it until another message followed. Mom, I know you're upset, but it's Christmas. Family should be together. The irony nearly made me laugh. Only now, when their plan had collapsed, when their maid had vanished, did they suddenly remember we were family. Another message buzzed. I saw your photos. They look amazing. How did you pay for such a luxurious trip? And there it was, the real question. Not about my health, not about my happiness, about money. Always money. I finally typed a reply, my fingers steady as stone. The question isn't how I paid for this trip, Charlotte. The question is why it took me so long to realize I deserved it. The phone buzzed relentlessly that night, its vibrations rattling against the marble nightstand like an angry hornet, but I ignored it. I had muted their voices for too long in my head, always prioritizing their comfort over my dignity, and now I was muting them literally, savoring the silence like fine wine. By dawn, the ocean painted itself in shades of pink and orange, the horizon stretching wide like the possibilities of my new life. And when I finally checked my phone, there were 56 missed calls and over 100 messages. It was a tidal wave of panic. Charlotte pleading, Ethan alternating between threats and apologies, even distant cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly demanding to know what was happening. I scrolled past most of them until one message caught my eye. Mom, Sophie cried all night asking if you had died. Please, just tell them you're okay. My chest tightened at that because those children, my innocent grandchildren, were pawns in their parents' twisted games, their love for me weaponized into chains meant to drag me back into compliance. I pressed my palm against the cool glass of the balcony door and whispered into the Caribbean breeze. I'm okay, my darlings. Grandma is more than okay. I opened my photo gallery, selected a picture from breakfast, me serene, smiling, surrounded by platters of exotic fruit and a shimmering ocean view, and posted it with the caption, Good morning from paradise. Nothing sweeter than waking up without reproaches, demands, or manipulations. Peace has a taste all its own. The comments flooded instantly, friends cheering, strangers inspired, women my age writing that they wish they had my courage. But woven through them like barbed wire were nasty remarks from Ethan's friends and perhaps even Charlotte herself under false names. So selfish abandoning your family on Christmas. Your poor grandchildren must be heartbroken. A real grandmother would never do this. Each one made me smile wider because I knew their desperation. If they were rallying the troops to shame me, then my rebellion had struck deep. My phone rang again, and this time the name startled me. Norma, Ethan's mother, the paragon of perfect grandmotherhood who had usurped my place at every important event, who had been held up as the model I was supposed to follow. Against my better judgment, I answered. Margaret, it's Norma, came her trembling voice. Please, you have to come back. Charlotte is inconsolable. Ethan hasn't slept. The children don't understand why you abandoned them on Christmas. The word abandoned rolled off her tongue like venom. I laughed, low and sharp. Abandoned? Did Charlotte tell you she demanded I'd come scrub her floors if I wanted a seat at her table? Did she tell you I've been excluded from birthdays and graduations for years while you sat in the front row? Did she tell you she told my grandchildren their grandmother's gifts were inappropriate, that they spoiled them? Silence crackled through the line. I didn't know, Norma whispered. Of course you didn't know, because your son is an expert at hiding his cruelty behind smiles. But don't worry, you're the grandmother they want. You can keep the role. And with that, I hung up, my pulse racing, not from fear, but from a strange, exhilarating clarity. For the first time in years, I was saying exactly what I thought. No filters, no apologies, just truth. I dialed Mark, the photographer, and scheduled another shoot, this time at the spa and along the shoreline, determined to capture my liberation in every frame. Later, as warm oils soaked into my shoulders beneath the therapist's skilled hands, my mind unspooled memories like film reels. The Christmases where my carefully chosen presents were returned unopened, the birthdays where my seat was mysteriously forgotten, the whispered insults about being too old-fashioned, the laughter behind closed doors when they thought I couldn't hear. But the straw that had broken me came roaring back to memory. Just weeks ago, Charlotte called, her voice hesitant, asking for money to fix Ethan's truck. It's just for the kids, Mom, to get them to school safely. Of course, I transferred the funds without hesitation. And then, days later, there was Ethan on Facebook, grinning beside a gleaming new Ford, boasting about his hard-earned reward. Hard-earned? With my sacrifice, with my trust. That was the final betrayal. The moment I realized they didn't see me as family, they saw me as an ATM, a doormat, a ghost whose only function was to supply labor or cash. The massage therapist pressed deeper into my muscles, and I felt decades of tension loosen like chains snapping. I left the spa glowing inside and out, and uploaded the next image. Me reclining beneath the cabana, a flute of champagne in hand, a tropical sunset blazing behind me. The caption? They say revenge is cold. I say it tastes best with sunshine and champagne. For everyone who thought I'd stay silent, here is my answer. The explosion online was immediate. My phone nearly vibrated off the table with notifications, support, outrage, admiration, gossip. Then came the call I had half expected and dreaded. Charlotte again. This time I answered. Mom, she said, her voice cracking. Please, where are you? Ethan is losing it. The kids are confused. Everyone's calling me asking what's wrong. I let the silence hang before I replied, my tone like steel wrapped in velvet. What's wrong, Charlotte, is that your mother got tired of being treated like a servant in her own family. What's wrong is that I finally decided to celebrate Christmas with someone who truly values me, myself. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, I thought I heard the little girl she used to be, the one who clung to me when thunder frightened her. But the kids, she whispered, they need you. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to answer with clarity. The children need a grandmother who respects herself, not one who accepts crumbs. They will thank me for this one day. Before she could respond, I hung up. Immediately, the phone rang again, then again, Ethan this time, then Charlotte, then numbers I didn't recognize. I turned the ringer off. Let them sweat. Let them feel for the first time the absence of the woman they had taken for granted. That night, under a sky glittering with stars, I danced salsa with one of the resort's instructors, laughing with abandon, my body remembering joy it had forgotten. Mark snapped photos as I twirled, my dress flowing, my smile unrestrained. I uploaded one of them with the caption, "Life begins when you stop living for others and start dancing to your own rhythm." At 72, I finally learned the steps. My phone lit up with 23 missed calls, but I only saw one thing clearly, the reflection of a woman who had finally reclaimed her dignity. The second morning of my new life arrived with the sound of my phone buzzing like a trapped insect on the marble nightstand, its vibrations relentless against the silence of my suite. But I had learned to savor the quiet of not answering. It was 5 a.m. in the Caribbean, which meant it was already 6 a.m. back in Ohio, and the day after Christmas was turning into a panic festival at Charlotte and Ethan's home. When I finally picked up the phone, the screen displayed 56 missed calls and more than 100 unread messages, a digital avalanche of desperation. "Mom, please, Ethan says he didn't mean it that way. Mom, the kids are crying nonstop. They think you don't love them. Margaret, you've ruined Christmas." The accusations and pleas blurred together like static until one stood out. "Mom, Sophie thinks you might have died. Please just tell her you're alive." That broke me for a second, a knife twisting in my chest. Because those little ones, Sophie with her gap-toothed grin, Jacob with his endless questions, Noah with his chubby toddler hands reaching for mine, they were innocent. They had been turned into pawns. Their love for me used like bait on a hook, but I couldn't let myself get reeled back into the net. I brewed the dark Jamaican coffee delivered with breakfast, its rich scent grounding me, and carried it to the terrace where the ocean was painted in soft pinks and golds. I snapped a photo of the scene, me, serene in a silk robe, sipping coffee before a table spread with tropical fruit. I uploaded it with the caption, "Good morning from paradise. Nothing like waking up without reproaches, demands, or manipulations. Peace has a taste all its own." Within minutes, the comments exploded again. Strangers applauded my courage. Old coworkers marveled at how radiant I looked. Women my age wrote things like, "You're giving me the courage to finally say no." But mixed into the flood were barbed comments, clearly orchestrated by Ethan's circle. "How could you abandon your grandchildren? A real grandmother would sacrifice anything for her family. So selfish." Each insult made me smile wider. If they were sending out their army of critics, then my rebellion had struck deep into their pride. Then the phone rang again, this time flashing a name I hadn't expected. Norma, Ethan's mother. The paragon of grandmotherhood in their eyes, the woman who had filled my seat at graduations and Christmas plays. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Margaret," she said, her voice trembling, "please, you have to come back. Charlotte is inconsolable. Ethan is a wreck. The children don't understand why you abandoned them on Christmas." I nearly laughed out loud at her choice of words. "Abandoned?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "Norma, did Charlotte tell you she conditioned my seat at Christmas dinner on me cleaning her house? Did she tell you she's excluded me from birthdays and graduations for years while you sat in the front row? Did she tell you she tells my grandchildren my gifts are inappropriate because they spoil them?" Silence stretched on the line, heavy and telling. I didn't know," she whispered finally. "Of course you didn't," I snapped, "because your son-in-law is very good at showing one face to the world and another behind closed doors. But don't worry, Norma. You're the grandmother they've chosen. You can keep the role." And with that, I hung up. My pulse raced, but it wasn't from guilt. It was from clarity, from years of swallowed truths finally clawing their way out of my throat. For the first time in decades, I had said exactly what I meant without softening the edges. Later, as I lay on a massage table by the beach, warm oils soaking into my skin while the ocean sang beside me, my mind wandered through the years of humiliation like a film reel stuck on repeat. The Christmases when my gifts were shoved aside, the birthdays I was forgotten, the whispered comments about being too old-fashioned, the day I let money for a basic car and saw it turn into a luxury truck on social media. Each memory burned brighter until my anger crystallized into something sharp, something useful. By afternoon, I was glowing inside and out, so I staged another blow. Mark, the photographer, snapped pictures of me in the resort's open-air cabana, champagne in hand, the sea at my back. I uploaded one with the caption, "They say revenge is cold. I say it tastes best with sunshine and champagne. For everyone who thought I'd stay silent, here is my answer." The effect was immediate. like tossing gasoline on a fire. My phone erupted with notifications, and then came the call I both dreaded and expected. Charlotte again. Against my instincts, I answered. "Mom," she said, her voice raw. "Please, where are you? Ethan is furious. The kids are asking nonstop. Everyone's calling me asking what's wrong." I let the silence stretch, then replied, my words steel wrapped in velvet. "What's wrong, Charlotte, is that your mother got tired of being treated like a maid in her own family. What's wrong is that I finally decided to celebrate Christmas with someone who truly values me, myself." There was a pause, and then I heard it, a catch in her breath, the sound of the little girl she used to be, the one who used to crawl into my bed when nightmares scared her. "But the kids," she whispered, her voice trembling, "they need you." My chest ached, but I forced myself to answer clearly. The children need a grandmother who respects herself, not one who accepts crumbs. One day they will thank me for this. And before she could speak again, I hung up. Immediately, the phone rang again, Ethan, then Charlotte, the numbers I didn't recognize. I turned the ringer off. Let them sweat. Let them sit in the silence they had forced on me for years. That night, under the stars blazing like diamonds, I joined the resort's dance class, salsa music pulsing through the warm night air. I laughed until my sides ached, spinning in the arms of a handsome instructor, my body moving with the freedom it hadn't known in decades. Mark captured it all, and later I uploaded one photo, me, mid-spin, my coral dress flaring, my smile wide. The caption was simple. "Life begins when you stop living for others and start dancing to your own rhythm. At 72, I finally learned the steps." My phone lit up with 23 missed calls, but I ignored them, staring instead at the woman in the photo, Margaret Anderson, reborn. The dawn of the second day in paradise broke with an almost smug beauty. The sky streaked in flaming oranges and pinks, as if the universe itself were applauding my rebellion. But my phone on the nightstand buzzed like an angry swarm, pulling me back to the storm I had left behind. When I finally turned it on, there were 127 new messages and 34 missed calls stacked like a mountain of desperation. "Mom, please, Ethan didn't mean it like that." "Margaret, you're being unreasonable." "The children are devastated. Do you want to traumatize them forever?" Every line oozed manipulation disguised as concern. But what struck me most was the second message I opened. "Mom, Sophie cried all night asking if you had died. Please at least tell them you're alive." My heart clenched, but I knew that wasn't my guilt to carry. It was theirs. They had weaponized my grandchildren's love against me for years, and now it was backfiring. I needed air, so I dressed and carried my coffee to the terrace, where the ocean stretched like an endless promise. I snapped a picture of myself, serene in my silk robe, a full table of exotic fruit before me, the caption reading, "Good morning from paradise. Peace is priceless when you stop letting others steal it." The comments flooded instantly, women my age cheering me on, strangers inspired, younger women writing things like, "My MIL treats her mom like this, and you're giving me courage." I smiled, sipping my coffee when my phone buzzed with an unexpected name. Tom, my neighbor back in Ohio. "Tom, I thought you should know," he wrote. "This morning I saw Charlotte and Ethan outside your house again, but they weren't alone. They had a locksmith with them. I think they're trying to get in." The blood in my veins turned to ice. "Tom, please go check. If they're inside, call the police," I texted back, my hands trembling. "I'm on my way," he replied. 20 minutes later, another message came through. "They're inside. I see Ethan, Charlotte, and another man I don't know. They're going through your desk. Margaret, they left with a box of papers. I overheard Charlotte say something about bank accounts, and she said she can't possibly have that much money saved." My breath caught. So that was it. Their frantic calls, their crocodile tears, their sudden obsession with family. They weren't worried about me at all. They were worried about how much I had and how to get their hands on it. Fury flared through me, volcanic and sharp, but it wasn't the blind rage of the past. No, this was refined, controlled, strategic fury, the kind that burns slow and bright until it lights everything around it. I opened my gallery, selected the most devastating photo yet, me on the yacht at sunset, a glass of champagne raised high, borrowed diamonds glittering at my neck, and uploaded it with the caption, "Toasting to life lessons." When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. When they show you 50 times, take a vacation to a private island and ask yourself why it took you so long to listen. My phone erupted, notifications streaming like fireworks, but I ignored them. Instead, I waited, knowing it would take only minutes for Charlotte and Ethan to explode. Sure enough, the phone rang, Ethan's name flashing across the screen. I answered, my voice steady, almost amused. "Hello, Ethan." There was a pause. Then his voice, tight with forced calm. "Margaret, we need to talk." "Do we?" I replied. "Because from what Tom tells me, you already broke into my home and went through my private papers. You seemed to be talking just fine then." Silence. Then Charlotte's voice broke through in the background, shrill and panicked. "Mom, it's not what you think. We were worried about you. We thought something happened." I laughed coldly. When I worry about someone, I call them. When you worry about me, you check my bank accounts. There's a difference. Ethan's voice came back defensive. "We just didn't understand how you could afford all this. The photos, the trip, the diamonds." "Ah," I interrupted. "There it is. The real question. Not about my health, not about my happiness, about money. Always about money." There was another silence, thick with guilt. Then Charlotte's voice, small, almost childlike. "Mom, please, we didn't mean—" "Stop," I cut her off. "Do you know what's saddest of all? That it took me 72 years to realize I had raised a daughter who sees me as a walking inheritance instead of her mother." The line was silent, then filled with muffled sobs. Ethan muttered something about family sticking together, but I was done. I hung up and stared out at the Caribbean, the waves crashing like applause. They thought they had me cornered, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. They thought I was still the quiet, accommodating woman who swallowed every insult, who believed family mattered more than dignity. But Margaret Anderson had changed. This was no longer about a revenge vacation. This was war, and I was ready for battle. The third morning in paradise dawned with a clarity I hadn't felt in decades. The sun slicing through the curtains like a spotlight on a stage where I was finally ready to deliver my performance. I had silenced my phone overnight, but when I turned it back on, the screen lit up like a Christmas tree. 127 new messages, 34 missed calls, a flood of desperate voices trying to pull me back into the cage I had escaped. But mixed in with the familiar panic were messages that shifted everything. The first was from Linda, my sister. "Margaret," she wrote. "After our conversation, I started calling around. The lies Charlotte and Ethan told run deeper than we thought." My pulse quickened. "What did you find out?" I typed back. Her reply hit like a hammer. "Remember Alan's wedding last year? Charlotte told me you refused the invitation because weddings made you sad after Bill's death. I just spoke to Alan. He said you never even received the invitation. He told me he asked about you and Charlotte said you didn't want to come." My stomach lurched. Another message arrived. "I also spoke to Aunt Ruth. She told me 2 years ago Charlotte called and said you were developing early dementia, that you got confused and agitated easily, and that's why you weren't at family gatherings. She said she stopped calling because she didn't want to upset you." My hand shook as I read. Dementia? They had played the dementia card to explain away my absence, to cover up their exclusion. The lies weren't just about events. They had rewritten my identity, painted me as a fragile, unstable woman so no one would question my absence. Linda wasn't done. I also spoke to Tom. He said Ethan told neighbors you were suffering from depression, that you rarely left the house, that it was better not to disturb you. Margaret, they built a whole alternate version of you to justify erasing you. I dropped the phone onto the bed, my breath ragged, the magnitude of the betrayal pressing down like a weight on my chest. They hadn't just humiliated me, They had stolen my story, rewritten my life as if I were already gone. I stared into the mirror at the woman with fire in her eyes and whispered, "Not anymore." I called Linda. "I need you to organize a family meeting," I said. "Everyone, cousins, aunts, neighbors, anyone who's been fed these lies. Tell them it's to clarify my situation because you're worried. Don't tell them I asked." She hesitated. "When?" "Tomorrow morning, at my house." "Margaret, are you sure?" Her voice trembled. I had never been more sure. "I'm done hiding." I hung up, called the airline, and changed my flight to leave that very evening. As I packed, I snapped one more picture in the hotel lobby, dressed in an emerald green suit I bought at the boutique, my luggage beside me, my chin high. The caption? "Paradise is beautiful, but some battles must be fought at home. When you have truth on your side, no battlefield intimidates you." The comments flooded in, friends cheering me on, strangers writing that I inspired them, while Charlotte's messages turned frantic. "Mom, please, just come home and we'll talk." Ethan's came next, smug. "Running away doesn't solve anything." I didn't reply. I was already planning my return. The flight was long, but I barely noticed, my mind racing with every humiliation, every lie, every manipulation, piecing together the puzzle they thought they had hidden. When the plane touched down in Ohio at 8 p.m., the winter air bit at my skin, but it felt refreshing, like a challenge. Tom was waiting at the curb, his face etched with concern. "Margaret," he said as he hugged me, "you look incredible, radiant. I feel reborn." On the drive home, he filled me in. "They've been at your house every day. I saw them bring a lawyer yesterday. I think they're trying to see if they can declare you incompetent." My laugh was sharp. "They're going to regret that." "The neighbors are confused," Tom added. "They've seen your photos. They don't know what to believe anymore." Good, I thought. Confusion meant cracks in their narrative. When I arrived at my house, everything was exactly as I had left it. The rose bushes, the stone path Daniel had once helped me lay, the fountain, but no longer felt like the home of a defeated woman. It felt like a fortress, and tomorrow it would be my courtroom. That night, as I unpacked, my phone buzzed with the message that cut deeper than any from Charlotte or Ethan. It was from Sophie, my eldest granddaughter, sent from a friend's phone. "Grandma, are you okay? Mom says you're sick and confused, but your pictures look happy. Why didn't you come for Christmas? Did I do something wrong?" My throat closed, tears spilling down my cheeks. That innocent child had been caught in the crossfire, fed lies to explain my absence, carrying guilt that was never hers. I typed carefully, "My love, you did nothing wrong. Grandma is perfectly fine. I'm just learning to value myself more. I love you very much. We'll see each other soon, I promise." I set the phone down, my resolve hardening. Tomorrow wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about reclaiming my relationship with my grandchildren, about showing them what strength looked like even at 72. Before bed, I snapped one final photo from my bedroom window, the garden bathed in moonlight, the fountain glinting softly. The caption, "Back home, but not the same woman." Tomorrow, some people will learn exactly who Margaret Anderson is when she stops pretending she doesn't have claws. I turned off the light, lay down, and closed my eyes with a smile. Tomorrow would be the day the truth came crashing down like thunder, and for the first time in years, I was ready to roar. The morning of the confrontation broke crisp and cold. The kind of Ohio winter morning where the sky hangs heavy and gray, but inside my veins ran hot with the fire I hadn't felt in decades. I dressed deliberately, choosing a deep purple dress that made my silver hair gleam, swept it into a perfect bun, and applied my makeup with the care of a general strapping on armor before battle. By 9 a.m., they began to arrive. Linda with her folder of notes, Aunt Ruth looking uneasy but curious, cousins shuffling awkwardly, neighbors stepping cautiously into my living room with whispers of confusion. Soon, the room was full, buzzing with speculation. "Does anyone know why we're here?" Alan asked, glancing around. I stepped into the doorway, letting the morning light spill over me like a spotlight. "Yes," I said clearly, my voice steady. "You're here because it's time for you to know the truth." Heads turned, murmurs rose, and for the first time in years, I felt their eyes on me not with pity or dismissal, but with anticipation. "For 3 years," I began, pacing slowly like an attorney in court, "you've been told I am depressed, confused, suffering from dementia, withdrawing from family by choice. You've been told I am unstable, that I no longer wish to attend graduations, birthdays, weddings, that I turned my back on my family." Faces shifted from confusion to dawning realization. "But the truth," I said, my voice sharpening, "is that I was systematically excluded, humiliated, erased. The truth is that just days ago, my own son-in-law told me if I wanted to attend Christmas dinner, I would have to come clean their house. And when I refused, they told the world I abandoned my family." Gasps rippled through the room. I turned to Linda. "Share what you found." She stood, reading from her notes. "Charlotte told me Margaret refused Alan's wedding invitation because it made her sad. Alan says she never even got an invitation. Aunt Ruth was told Margaret had dementia. Neighbors were told she was depressed and antisocial." One by one, witnesses spoke. Tom cleared his throat. "I saw Charlotte and Ethan break into Margaret's house with a locksmith. They left with a box of documents. I heard them mention bank accounts." Murmurs turned to outrage. Then, as if scripted by fate, the doorbell rang. Tom peeked through the curtain. "It's them," he said. "Charlotte and Ethan, and a lawyer." "Perfect," I replied, my voice cold steel. "Let them in." The door opened, and they stepped inside, Charlotte pale, Ethan stiff with anger, the lawyer uncomfortable as he surveyed the packed room. They froze when they realized the audience awaiting them. "What is this?" Ethan barked. "An intervention," I said, simply. "But not for me, for you." Charlotte clutched Ethan's arm, her eyes darting nervously. The lawyer muttered, "Perhaps this isn't the right time." "On the contrary," I said firmly, "it's exactly the right time." I moved to the center of the room, the light streaming across my face. "For years, you have painted me as unstable, depressed, senile. For years, you've told others I refused invitations when you deliberately excluded me. You've stolen my reputation, my dignity, my place in this family. And when that wasn't enough, you broke into my home to rummage through my private papers." Silence fell heavy. Ethan's face flushed crimson. "We were worried," he stammered. "We thought something happened." "Worried?" I snapped. "When I worry, I call. You broke into my house and rifled through my financial documents. Tell me, counselor." I turned to the lawyer. "Is that illegal?" The man shifted uncomfortably. "Absolutely not. That's unlawful entry and violation of privacy." Gasps filled the room. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, please." "No," I thundered, my voice rising with decades of suppressed rage. "For 3 years, you lied about me to my family. For 3 years, you made my grandchildren believe their grandmother didn't care. For 3 years, you reduced me to a caricature of weakness to justify your cruelty. And 4 days ago, you told me I had to scrub your floors if I wanted to watch my grandchildren open presents." I pulled out my phone, flashing the photos from the Caribbean, each one radiant, undeniable. Does this look like dementia? Does this look like depression? Or does it look like a woman you underestimated? The room erupted in murmurs. Aunt Ruth stood. "Is this true, Charlotte? Did you really say those things?" Charlotte broke, sobs shaking her frame. "I was jealous," she cried. "I thought you loved her more than me. I thought I would never measure up, so I pushed her out. Ethan tried to steady her, but the room had already turned. Linda crossed her arms. Jealousy doesn't justify erasing your own mother. I turned to the lawyer. You were hired to explore my competency, weren't you? He nodded reluctantly. Yes. Well, I'm competent enough to hire you myself, to sue them for defamation, emotional abuse, and breaking into my home. The room erupted. Ethan sputtered, You can't be serious. Can I not? I said coldly. You wanted to take my rights, my voice, my independence. Now I'll take you to court if you fail to make this right. Tears streamed down Charlotte's face. Mom, please, think of the children. My voice softened, but did not break. I am thinking of the children. I'm thinking of teaching them that a grandmother is not a servant, not a wallet, not a burden, that dignity is not traded for scraps of family affection. I turned to the room. My will is being rewritten. My estate will bypass Charlotte and Ethan. My grandchildren will receive their education and medical needs through a trust managed by a bank, and the rest will go to a foundation for elderly women who suffer emotional abuse from their families. Gasped again, this time followed by applause. Linda first, then Tom, then one by one the room filled with clapping until it thundered through the house. I raised my hand for silence. Charlotte, Ethan, you will go to therapy. You will admit your lies to the children. You will make a public acknowledgement of the damage you caused. Only then will I consider forgiveness. If you fail, I will pursue the law with every ounce of strength left in me. Ethan stared at the floor, his bravado gone. Charlotte sobbed openly. I'll do anything, she whispered. Whatever it takes. I nodded once. Good. Because Margaret Anderson is no longer the silent woman you could erase. I am a woman who knows her worth, and I will never accept less than what I deserve again. The applause roared back, louder than before, a sound like judgment and redemption all at once. And in that moment, surrounded by family and neighbors, I reclaimed my voice. Not just my voice, but my throne.